Okay, in this video, we're going to be adding what's called rational numbers. Now, rational numbers at this point in a 7th grade or pre-algebra class would be really just decimals and fractions. Later on, in another pre-algebra class or even algebra, you'll learn about what exactly rational numbers are. And I can have another video about what they are. But at this point, we're really just talking about decimals, fractions, whole numbers, and such. And in this case, we have 4.2 plus negative 3.8. And in my other videos, I was just talking about movement on the number line. So if we have 4.2, we would move to the right, positive 4.2. Now, I'm just going to approximate this here. 4.2 is about right here. Now, I can't put the exact location, but that's okay because we're going to have to employ a different strategy here. And here, if we add a negative, that means we're going to be moving to the left on the number line from that point. So we're going to go here, and then we're going to be moving to the left. And I'm just going to move to the left. I'm going to signal that as that direction. Now, the length of that arrow is probably incorrect, but I'm really just showing that I'm moving in that direction 3.8 units to the left. Now, to find out exactly where that location is, we have to subtract these two numbers. So if they're going in, as a general rule here, if we're going in one direction with one arrow and a different direction with the other arrow, we're going to subtract the two values. That's what I'm going to do right now. So as we have 4.2 minus 3.8, now I see a lot of students, they'll want to do 8 minus 2, go up like this, and then 4 minus 3. No, you have to go down with each value. And typically what we do is we will borrow. We'll borrow a 10 from here, so that goes down to 3, and then that 10 gets added to the 2. 10 plus 2 is 12. Now we can subtract down. 12 minus 8 is 4. Here's our decimal. And 3 minus 3 is 0. Now, throughout this, we also need to recognize that as we move to the right 4.2 and then move to the left 3.8, we're not going to cross 0. So we're still in the positive realm here. And that means the answer is 0.4. So here's our second question. And already we have this in addition, which is what we need. And I'm going to move to the right 2.7. So I move to the right 2. 0.7 is about here. And then this says if I add negative 5.1, that means I have to move to the left 5.1. And I'm going to go from here. And I'm going to go to the left here. And I'm going to go to the left 5.1. Now, if I move to the left 5.1, we have to think for a moment. If I go to the right 2.7 and I go to the left 5.1, will I cross 0? And the answer is yes, you will cross 0 because that value, 5.1 value, is larger than 2.7. That means we're moving to the left farther than we moved to the right originally. The fact that we're going to move cross 0 means our answer is negative. So I'm going to put my answer as negative right now. And like I talked earlier, if we're going in two different directions, if we go into two different directions, that means we're going to subtract the values. So I have to subtract these values, but you got to be careful. Since 5.1 itself is larger than 2.7, then I have to subtract them, and this number has to go on top. So for a moment, I'm going to have 5.1. I'm going to forget about the negative right now, and I'm going to subtract 2.7. The reason why I'm subtracting is because I'm going in two different directions on this number line. If I was going in the same direction, I would just add them. So now this right here, I can't take 7 minus 1 or 1 minus 7. I have to borrow 1 from the 5. So that means this will be 4. and I can add 1 plus 10, which is 11. And now 11 minus 7 is 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. Keep your decimals lined up. And that's 2.4. Now, we know that the answer is negative because we cross 0. And the answer ends up being negative 2.4. Okay, here's another one where we have negative 3.2 minus 1.7. In my previous video, when we were subtracting integers, we'll use the same rule where we're going to turn this into an addition problem. So this ends up being negative 3.2, and then this has to be plus, because that minus is turning into an addition, the subtraction is turning into an addition problem. And then if that gets turned into addition, then the inverse, so adding the inverse of positive 1.7 is negative 1.7. And now I can see now that I have to move to the left 3.2, and I have to move to the left again 1.7. So I move to the left 3.2, to the left, and I'll put approximately 3.2 is there, and then plus 1.7. Now I'm only going to approximate this, something like this. That means I have to go 1.7 in that direction. Now, unlike this one, we're going in different directions here. We're subtracting these numbers. But when we're going in the same direction, we just have to add these numbers together. So I'm going to ignore the negatives right now, and I'm just going to add. I'm going to add 3.2 and 1.7. I add them together, and that's 9. Have that decimal, 4. So the answer ends up being negative 4.9, because we never crossed over 0 here. All we did was move further into the negative direction. So the answer ends up being, and I'll just write it in here, negative 4.9. So now we have our last one here, negative 5.6 minus negative 1.2. We got to turn this into an addition problem. So we start with negative 5.6, and now this is going to be addition because that subtraction is turning into addition. And now we need to identify what is the inverse of negative 1.2. It's positive 1.2. So I just write 1 point, oops, I want to write that in white. 1.2. And now I'm going to approximate this on the number line. Negative 5.6. 5.6 is something like this. Plus 1.2. Something like that. Since I'm going in different directions, I have to subtract the two numbers. And so that means I'm going to have 5.6 minus 1.2. Lining up my decimals, which is easy to do in this case. 6 minus 2 is 4. 5 minus 1 is also 4. And we have 4.4. But now we got to think, did we ever cross 0? Well, if we go to negative 5.6 here, and we only go to the right 1.2, we didn't have a chance to cross 0, so our answer is still negative. So the answer then is negative 4.4. And that's it. That is how you add and subtract rational number decimals.